All right, so today we're going to be building this box from scratch. Some of the things and that we know we need for this, it's just going to be a four-sided box with a bottom, but we really want it to be parametrically designed. So we know that that means we can go into our parameters and we can change certain dimensions and it won't distort our box at all. So if I changed, for example, the length of the box from 6 to 2, it narrows the box, but all the sides of the box stay the right widths, the holes remain in the right places, and all of our dimensions are kind of constrained that way. So let's pop out. This is what we're going to be doing. Let's make a new design. If you guys are following along, you might have a design that you've already started. You can modify it. You may end up wanting to start a brand new design because going back and fixing things that are in the wrong place can sometimes be a little bit difficult. But don't forget, you can scroll back in your timeline and edit a previous sketch. So every one of our designs should start with a sketch. We're going to sketch this from a top view looking down on our box. So I'm going to place my sketch on the XY plane. When I click that, it sets up this orthographic view. I'm looking at a flat piece of paper now. And I'm going to show a couple different ways to do this. We've done a couple designs in the past. And the first thing we did was we locked it to the origin. Okay, that's fine. We can do that. If I click, I can then dimension my sides by using the select tool, clicking one of the sides and pressing the letter D. That will give me a dimension and I can type 3, 4, 5, whatever I want. That will change that. And we can see the sides that are black are locked in place. So if I use the select tool, I can't click on any of the black sides and move them or change them at all. But this blue one, if I'm unsure what's not constrained about it, when I click on it, when I move it, we see that this one slides up and down. So I haven't dimensioned the vertical distance here yet. So instead of clicking on something and then pressing the letter D, I can also just press D and then click on one of the parts of my sketch. I can change the order of that. Let's say this will be, that's 5, and let's say this will be 4. Okay. So good. Every part of my sketch is set and locked. I have a side of 5 and a side of 4. Everything is black. We have some of our constraints. We see them. They are represented by these little symbols. When I hover over those symbols, it'll tell me what side is, or what part of my sketch that symbol goes for. So when I hover here, you see the top edge is blue. And when I click on it, this is a horizontal constraint. So that's saying that this top line has to be parallel to this x-axis. All right, so those are some of the constraints. Now, what I'm going to want to do is go into modify parameters to start adding parameters. You could do this before you even begin your sketch. I'm going to do this really quickly. I'm going to make a length, let's say 4, a width. We already have it up there, but I'm going to actually use that again, 5, right? And then when I go into the third dimension, I need a height for my box. So let's add that in for now. And I'll make it a height of 3. Okay, so those are all ready to go. None of these numbers change anything in my sketch. Even though I have a 5 here, if I change this 5 to 4, nothing happens. That's because my sketch, my design itself, is not linked to these parameters yet. So we need to go into our model, and I see sketch 1, I have 2 parameters in here. I typed in 5. Instead of typing in 5, I want to type width. So I think most of what I'm talking about right now is review for most of you, but we're just going to kind of go from the beginning. Notice the difference in these 2 parameters. The 4 is just a number, or dimensions, I should say. This says fx5. So that's telling me that I've linked to a user-defined parameter. It'll also say fx if you do a little bit of math in there. We can use equations in there, and we'll see that in a little bit. So the 4, instead of typing 4, we want to have width. No, this is length. And start typing, it kind of prompts me, and I can hit enter to fill in the rest of the word and hit enter again, and now I've locked that to 4. So the nice thing is, every time I now change these user-defined parameters, I don't need to go into this anymore. my length, if I decide, no, I don't want it to be 4, I want it to be 4.5, hit enter, it moves up. Notice the top edge moved. Why did the top edge move? Because the bottom edge was locked to the origin. So that bottom edge can't move down to get to the 4.5, 4.4. All right, so far so good. A lot of talking just to get a rectangle on the page. Let's see the next rectangle. Basically, there's a few ways we could do this, pretty much infinite ways. A couple things that I've seen people do is basically draw the sides of their boxes as like long, skinny rectangles. That's fine. That works to define the side. I'm going to do it slightly different. So I'm going to, but there's nothing wrong with that way of doing a skinny, tall rectangle on every edge. But I'm going to put a rectangle in the middle. Okay. And some people just kind of started counting squares and placing this, and then count squares over here, and let's place that. Okay, that's exactly in the middle. This is great, but it's all blue. Why is it all blue? Well, if I click on any one of these sides, I see that they don't have to be there. I could move them. Okay, so we haven't fully constrained this sketch yet. You might think, all right, well, I need to change the lengths and lock them to be a specific length. So if I click on this side and I press D, 4, click there, hit enter on 4. Okay, cool. Now that can't be changed size. If I do the same thing on this side, 3, hit enter. Now this has to be 4 and has to be 3. Fine, but when I click this, I don't change the size anymore, but it's not locked in space. Now, a couple people said, oh, can't I just do this lock thing? This, when I hover over it, it's telling me I'm going to fix, which means lock the size and location of a point or an object. That's fine, but first off, let me just do it. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to click my whole rectangle. I'll try that lock tool. When I use it, it turns green. So now this thing can't move anymore. I can't click on any of this and move it. I'm trying to move this edge. It won't move. But when I change my parameters are only affecting that outer rectangle. So when I change this from a 4 to a 6, that green rectangle just stays where it is. That's not what we want. This is not how we want this to behave. So we need to rethink that inner rectangle a little bit. So I have that rectangle in place. What do I want the lengths of the sides to be? Well, this vertical side is always going to be a little bit smaller than this outer piece. Now, I've seen some people say, oh, why don't I just create its own parameter? So what is the vertical line is length? Why don't I make inner length? And since this is 4, length of 4, if I guess I didn't make a parameter for the wall thickness, I probably should. But let's say it's 0.5. I'll add that in right after I do this. If it's 0.5, then this blue line, this vertical one right here, should be the outer edge is 4. It should be 4 minus a half, and then minus a half here. So really minus 1 inch. So some people are like, all right, so if that's 4, this should be 3. And then I can say, set this side to be inner length. The problem is, when you start changing the dimensions of your box, you're always going to have to remember to change this outer number and this inner number. We really want them, just change one and that other one changes for you. So let's go into our parameters. I'm going to get rid of this inner length thing. It's kind of redundant and it's making extra work. Oh, I can't because it's set for something. How do we get rid of that? Well, inner diameter, can I remove it? Can't just click there. I think if I click on it, go away. It's unhappy that I did that. Let's put that back. Okay. If I click on this with the mouse, I think I could just hit delete. Now it's gone. I don't have that parameter anymore. Let's add in get rid of inner length. We want, let's call it thickness for our wall thickness. And we'll go with a 1/2 inch thick wall, okay? And now this dimension, what do I want it to be? I want it to be length, which is 4, but then I want to subtract the thickness times 2. I want to subtract the thickness on top and the thickness on the bottom. When I hit enter, now that will always be the right length. If I change my parameters and I modify length to be, instead of 4, 6, cool. This is 5, that's 6. Working, but not fully constrained, so my blue inner rectangle is not lined up in the correct place. But the size is correct, so that's good. Let's keep going and let's continue to fix this. Let's dimension this edge, and that's going to be width minus thickness times 2. Okay, so that's the right width, but we still need to lock this into place. I can slide it around, and that's not really good. So how do we do this? I'm going to show you a way to do it, and then I'm going to redo everything I just did way faster and a little more efficiently. Okay? So one thing we can do is just say, all right, this corner should always be thickness away from the left edge and thickness away from the top. I could place a rectangle here. See that little box there that's popping up? That box is telling me I'm constraining this new rectangle to the corner of that big black rectangle. Click there. And now when I move this down, if I type in thickness and hit enter, and then I can hit tab and I can type thickness again. I'm not touching my mouse. If you touch your mouse, it'll kind of like start putting numbers in sometimes. So now I have thickness again and I hit enter. Now, this corner is exactly where I want the corner of my blue rectangle to be. So there's one last constraint we're going to do. Like I said, this is not the most efficient way, but you're probably learning a bunch of tools right now. This constraint, called coincident, when you hover over it, it'll tell you what it is, constrains the positions of 2 points together. Okay? So that means that I can take this point and constrain it to the location of this point, make them go to the same place. So I'm going to click on coincident. I'm going to click the corner of my rectangle, and then I'm going to click the corner of that little guide square, and it slid it over into place, and now it's locked in place. Now the size is fixed. I told it what size it has to be, and its location is fixed. I can't move it anywhere. Everything's black. My sketch is good to go. Everybody following me so far? Okay. Now there's a few things I want to clean up. Like this square in the corner is not really part of my design. I don't want it there, right? I want this blue wall, top edge of my box, to be one shape. These lines were just meant to help me place this inner rectangle, but they shouldn't be dividing up my sketch. So if I click on one of those, I can just type X and it turned it into a dotted line. Now that dotted line is not dividing up my shapes. Yes?
Is that like when you like double click it and start making normal text?
Exactly. I was going to do it for the sec. So I'm not going to double. Do you double click?
Well, like,
I think you right click. Click with 2 fingers.
yeah,
Yep. So I'm going to click on it and click with 2 fingers. And there you go. Normal / construction line. So these are called construction line. That's why there's an X. That's exactly what I was just going to point out. So all of these things, they have little shortcuts that you can find. And when you start getting really good and comfortable with this, all those little keyboard shortcuts, your sketches will go way faster. I think I mentioned this to you guys, but I'm going to say it again. If you have a mouse at home and you want to bring it in, there's some really nice shortcuts on the way you click the mouse. Scrolling on the wheel zooms in and out. When you click down on the wheel, like they have like a little click, you can rotate your shape, and you hold shift and click and like you move it around. So it's instead of pinching and pulling and sliding with 2 fingers, It's a really nice way to navigate your models if you have a mouse. And then when you have the mouse with the keyboard shortcuts, you start getting really efficient and you can build these things pretty quickly. So yeah, let's go to normal/construction. All right, there we go. I got rid of my lines. My box is placed right in the middle. Now, this might sound crazy, but I'm going to redo all of this in another way. A way that I think is a little bit more efficient. So you guys have seen this 2-point rectangle. That's right on the shortcuts bar in this create menu for sketches. I'm going to remove all this stuff. Just going to highlight it and delete it. Back to literally making a new design. Instead of using that rectangle, there's a whole bunch of other types of rectangles I can use, and I'm going to use a center rectangle. Now, center rectangles, we can lock the center of the rectangle to the origin, and now I can type length and width. And now I have that same rectangle that I had before. This, what is 5 by 6 now, but it's locked to the center. And now if I do that same type of rectangle again for the inner, I don't have to worry about where it's placed. As long as it's placed centered on the origin, it'll always be the same distance from the edges. Its location will be already locked to the origin. I'm going to show you before I click anything. Some people click and then set their dimensions. Notice what my corner where under my mouse looks like. It's just a little plus sign. But if I drag it to certain locations, you see that X? That's telling me I'm locking this rectangle to the outer edge. So it can be different sizes, left and right, but the vertical will always be locked to that outer edge. We don't want that. But I'm showing this because I accidentally clicked on this diagonal and it locked it to that. And then I wasn't able to fix that and change the shape of it. So be careful where you click. These little blue indicators, whether it's this X, you got a box, or this X, is telling you that Fusion is doing some smart kind of guesswork in the background, trying to figure out what constraints you might want on your component. So I'm going to just kind of not click anywhere. I'm just going to leave this hovering, and I'm going to type those dimensions. What do we have? This vertical side was length minus thickness times 2. That looks good. Hit tab to go to the other box. This is width minus thickness times 2. Hit enter. There we go. I didn't have to worry about any of that construction line stuff in the corner because they're both centered on the origin, and no matter what, they're going to be aligned to each other. So we can just double check by changing parameters and see what happens when I change my length to now 4. What if I change my width to 7? Oh. Looks good. Everything's staying where it's supposed to be. So we're really close. The next step is I need to place the holes for the top corners. A lot of people started a whole new sketch. There's no need to. If you can put everything in a single sketch, it's cleaner. It's better for most of your designs. You have one place where everything is located, and if you have to change anything, you know where it is. So let's place that circle right in the corner. Now, there's nothing really for me to click on. I don't want it stuck on this line, right? I need to put something there to align to. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. The first way is what I did before. I could make a rectangle, and it's going to actually end up being a square, and I want it to be thickness divided by 2 and thickness divided by 2. And now the corner of that is exactly in the middle of both the top edge and the left edge. And if I place my circle right at the corner of this rectangle, it's centered. That's what we wanted. That was our goal. I'm going to show you a better way to do it. I don't even know if it's better. Maybe this is quick and easy, and that's fine. Just show you another way to do it. Hopefully, it'll help you understand constraints even a little bit farther. So I'm going to point out a couple things. I'm going to delete this in a little bit. First, I'm missing some parameters, so let's add them in. I also want to have a hole diameter. Not just hole diameter. And let's give it, you could make it like some people have made it like a quarter, let's say like thickness of the wall times 0.25, so it's a quarter of the thickness. That's a good option. I'm going to show you something else. Let's say we know that the screws that we have fit into an 1/8 inch hole. Nice thing about Fusion, it can figure that out. It can say, all right, 1/8 inch, 1 divided by 8, not 1 point, 1 divided by 8. And it even gives you a value right underneath. It does the calculation for you. You hit enter. There it is. And now we can use this on our circle. If I type D, click there. There we go. And I can tell it to be hole diameter. All right, there we go. Now we have our size and location all defined. Everything turned black. We're fully constrained. Here's a different way to do that. Instead of using that square, I'll do it in the top right here. We're going to use some just straight up lines. Now, when I click on this edge, do you see the X? It's telling me it's going to be located on that edge, the first point. Click there, and I'm just going to drag down. And how far down do I want it to be? I want it to be half the thickness. So thickness divided by 2. And notice 90 degrees is kind of default because where I have the mouse, I do want it to be 90 degrees. So I can hit enter. And now this line is partially constrained. The line itself is locked to the outer edge. When I hover over here, you can see the coincident, that little coincident tool, right? Constraint. It tells me when I click on it. When I even hover over that coincident thing, it's telling me it's this line. And you see the top edge is blue. So it's telling me exactly what's coincident. The length is locked in, but it's blue because I can slide it anywhere left and right. All right, so we're getting close. We know it. We want it over here somewhere, but we want it to be right in the middle of this right edge. So I'm actually going to do exactly that same process again for the right edge. Click on the side, pull it out. I want it to be thickness divided by 2 out. And its angle looks good. I'm going to hit enter. And now, same thing as for the other one. This can go anywhere up and down. But we really want these to slide until these points are at the exact same location. We have a tool for that. We have a constraint for that. It's the coincident constraint. Coincident puts 2 points together in space. So I click on the first point, end point of this line. I click on the other one. They lock together. And they're fully constrained now. They can't go anywhere. They have to be, those points have to be at the same place. They have to be a certain length. We're good to go. And that looks really similar to the sketch that I did in this corner, right? It's the same lines. They're in the same place. But I'm just going to show you a couple things. You see that there's this vertical line, but there's no line between the corner and here. If I hover there, it's the whole top edge. If I hover here, you can see I can get the whole top edge, or I can get just the top edge of that small square that I put there. So both of those strategies work. It's a personal preference which you use, and sometimes you might want one over the other or vice versa. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this stuff. I could do this strategy at every single corner and put a hole and put a hole and put a hole, and I could do that strategy 4 times. I'm going to show you a nice little shortcut. We're going to undo some of that work. I'm going to get rid of those lines. Now check this out. This is a tool that nobody, I don't think, has used before. So make sure you take a look at it. If you're working on your sketch, watch this. We're going to do something called create rectangular pattern. Okay? And a rectangular pattern takes some geometry in your sketch and repeats it in a grid. So when I click on, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little closer what I'm working on. But I'm going to click the center circle. You can see that it's blue, that dot at the center of my circle. And I'm also going to, I want the circle itself too. So right now it's objects. This is blue. That's what I'm doing. That's the part of the action. I'm selecting all the things I want to put into my grid. So I want the center of my circle to move, but I also want the circle itself to move. And right now its default is 3. I'm going to leave it for a second. I'm going to just change the distance of this to be 1. Oh. What did I do? 1. Notice what it did. 3, 1. So circle, circle, circle. 3 circles, each one of them spaced out by 1. You can do some just dragging, so you can adjust it that way. You can type into this box, or we can use parameters from our user-defined parameters. Now, there's a whole second set of quantity and distance. So I'm at quantity and distance. Here, there's another quantity and distance. Let's change that. Notice what it did. It went up. So now I have a grid. This is close, but these are not the things that I want it to be. So I hit enter. I didn't mean to, actually. And now this is kind of locked in place. I can undo and just restart. I'm going to show you that it's also in change parameters. We should be able to get, maybe not. Oh, here we go. D21, 3. That was how many holes we have. So I could change that to 2. There we go. Now we have 2 sideways. But these are not really descriptive. D21, and it's not really telling me what I'm working on. I'd rather not do that. But I want you to know you can always go in and change those things and fine tune the distances that we moved things. Just showing you that there's multiple places to do this stuff. I'm gonna hit OK, but I'm gonna undo my rectangular pattern. I'm gonna click the center of my circle and the circle itself. I have 2 selected. And now I'm going to change these to 2 because I want 2 sideways and 2 vertical. And what is the distance I want to go? The first thing I think about, it's like, well, my box it has some distance width. So maybe it's width. And I hit enter. Notice I'm a little past the edge. This checkbox is where the circle is going. I'm past the edge here. How far past did I go? Well, width is from left outside to right outside. This hole is shifted by half of the thickness. So I'm half thickness past the edge. I really want to be earlier by half thickness. That would put me on the actual edge. And I want to be half thickness again. So actually, I want to go backwards by the distance thickness. So instead of width, it's width minus thickness. There it is, right in the exact right place. I hit enter again, so I didn't really want to do that. Let's fix that. All right. Center circle, circle itself. 2, 2. Now we knew this was width minus thickness. All right, so that's good. What about the vertical direction? Well, that's just going to be length minus thickness. Now, you might see something already. It's putting them up here. That's not really what I want. So instead of length, what should it be? It should be maybe negative length. But I'm past the bottom edge. So we want it to go down length, and then we want to go backwards thickness. So it should be minus length minus thickness? No, why not? Because minus is moving farther down. So actually it's negative length plus thickness. There we go. I hit enter. My holes are all in the right place on the middle of every side. And we can modify our user parameters. And when I change any of these, so let's make this 4, looking good. Everything is staying centered on every side. The holes are in the right place. Ooh, looks like I messed something up. What did I do? Anybody see it? I only put the center of the circle there. I didn't move the circle itself. That's a little messy. I can't just change something on here. I actually have to undo that. How many times can you repeat the same step? Click the circle. One thing selected. Click the, there we go. I have 2 selected. 2, 2. Width minus thickness. Length minus thickness. Does everything look right now? No, it was negative length plus thickness. Does everything look right now? Are my circles there? Yeah, now the circles are there. If I zoom in, I can see them. Hit OK. My center and the circle themselves are there. So my sketch is done. I have all my geometry for my box in one single sketch. I'm going to say finish sketch. Don't forget, right now we're in, it's kind of like when you click top, you can see orthographic projection view. So we're looking directly down from the top. If you hit home, it's nice. It fits your whole design so far into the page, fills up the space, looks at an angle. You can click any of these corners of this box to just get a nice view from directly that side. You can click on an edge to look at it kind of from that edge, or a side to look at it straight from that side. So these are orthographic projections. If you're looking at a piece of paper directly from the side, all you see is a flat line, right? So let's go back here, just showing you a little bit of ways to navigate and move your sketch around. I think I missed one little thing. I'm going to go back into my sketch. I want to turn these into construction lines. Holding shift, I selected 2, I just hit X. Now they're construction lines. We're going to go back out. And now we're going to do the extrude tool. You guys have seen this before. I click on extrude. And if I click on this outer part, looks good. If I extruded this, I'd have holes all the way from the bottom of my box to the top. I don't want that. So let's click all the holes as well. Notice on the side where it says profiles, I've selected 2 so far. I keep clicking. 3, 4, 5 profiles to extrude. How high do I want to extrude this up? I can type it in this box or right on the little dialog box here. I want it to go up by height. There it is. Looks good. I'm happy. Notice this operation, new body. I'm going to come back to that in a second. You guys are going to see what other options are in here, but new body is the right thing to click now. I hit OK. I can look and rotate. I'm missing the bottom of my box, but I'm getting close. Okay. I'm going to hit home so this fills up my page again. Looks good. Now, I've seen some people, when they tried to put the bottom on the box, they started a whole new sketch. Fine, you could do it, but no need to. Our bottom is already defined in our original sketch. We just can't see our original sketch anymore because once you extrude from it, Fusion thinks, oh, you're done with this sketch. You don't need it anymore. I want to reveal that sketch again. There it is. I can use my extrude tool. I can click on that center rectangle and I can extrude it by a distance of thickness. Now it goes up by thickness. We're getting really close. Notice operation is join. That means that it's going to like, I'm going to call it like weld this to the outer walls. It's going to be all one block. That makes a lot of sense for things like 3D printed objects or molded things, right? There are no seams between them. If you wanted to say new component, this new rectangle that I just extruded up would have a seam between the walls and that. That makes sense if you're building things out of plywood or construction materials where each thing is a different board. I'm just going to keep it as join for now. So now it's combining them. All right, we got one last step. I know the bell rang. We're going to keep talking. I'm sorry. I'm going as fast as I can. So the last thing we need to do is put these holes in. I'm going to extrude for the holes as well. I can't click on them right now because there's a box in the way. I can hide my bodies, get rid of it, and see just my sketch. And now I can click on these 4 holes. Okay, let's bring the body back in. And how far do I want that to go? Well, for now, I'm just going to type a distance. We could set this with a parameter, but I'm going to just type a distance of 1. And it actually knows, hey, there's already a body there. So if I'm extruding into it, maybe I want to cut it. That is what I want to do, except I don't want my holes to go from the bottom up. I want them to go from the top down. But the problem is my sketch is down at the bottom. So I need to move this extrusion. So I'm going to change, instead of profile plane, I'm going to say offset. And I'm going to move this whole thing to an offset of height, which means it's going to start at the top of my box. Good, except now I'm extruding up into space, and I don't want these little sticks sticking up. So that means now that I have the offset set correctly, my distance can be 1 inch down. And now it automatically knows I'm moving into it, and I can cut and hit OK. And now my box is fully complete everything is parametric, and I can change parameters, and every single thing. All I have to do is change one number, and that will change my whole sketch, but keep all of my holes in the right place. My wall thickness is correct. Everything is parametrically adjustable. Hope it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop my recording.